listening to Hungry for More, an Epicurean's Dilemma, and I'm your host, Trish Close. Today's episode sponsored by Tap and Vine 559, the place to eat, meet, and drink in Southern Oregon. Randy Ullom on the podcast today. He's the wine master at Kendall Jackson and recently named American Wine Legend in Wine Enthusiast Wine Star Awards. And after chatting with him, it is easy to see why he was honored as a true icon in American wine industry. We talk about his beginnings and growing up with a dad who loved to make wine as a hobby. He says really, though, it was when he was exploring wine country in Chile that the light bulb went off and he decided, yes, this is what I wanted to do. So back to school, back in the States, he studied viticulture and enology. Working in Ohio and upstate New York, and then Sonoma called. He worked at DeLoach Vineyards for just over a decade and then landed the job at Kendall Jackson, and he's been there ever since. We're talking about 3 decades now. We talk about the innovative initiatives he helped put into place, the perfecting of the Chardonnay that Kendall Jackson is known for, why he loves this company so much, and honestly, it's so easy to see after all of these years, the passion for winemaking hasn't gone anywhere. Here's Randy Ullom. Has anyone ever told you you have a Sam Elliott vibe?
Yeah, they have.
Okay, I figured.
Definitely.
It's the stash, probably.
It is, yeah. Yeah, that's the gray hair.
I don't know. Well, hey, Sam Elliott is a huge compliment, at least in my book. I love that man.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Randy Ullom, thank you for being here with me today on this little podcast that could. I so appreciate it. I'm so excited to chat with you. Winemaster at Kendall Jackson, just named American Wine Legend in Wine Enthusiast Wine Star Awards. That's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking, surprising for me.
Yeah, you heard about this honor in November. I mean, before we dive into it, what your first thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know. I just couldn't. I was speechless, basically. It's completely speechless. Adam called me and told me about that, and I said, "What?" And he said, "No, you're it. No nominations. It's just you." I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I said, "I'm not dead yet."
Nice, but I mean, this is you're a true icon in the American wine industry. That's really what this honor means. That's what it stands for.
And I appreciate that enormously from the bottom of my heart, for sure.
All right, we are going to chat first. Where are you from originally? And I do want to note you're on vacay right now, so lucky you. I'm sure harvest probably kicked your booty, so you took a little vacation.
That's right. Yeah, every year after harvest, I try to spend a week in some warm climate and then a week in Colorado skiing, after the first of the year. So I'm in the warm climate part right now, specifically down in Cabo San Lucas, where it's quite warm.
Very warm and probably well-deserved vacation. Mr. Winemaster, where are you from originally?
So I was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I lived there for about 5 years. And then we moved, my family, to Lexington, Massachusetts for about 6 years there. And from there, we moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I graduated high school. And it was probably there where, I watched my dad make wine out of grape juice in the basement, in the 5-gallon jugs. I thought, that's pretty cool. And then, of course, the drinking ages were a lot lower then. So actually experimenting, as one might say, with beer, wine, and such, in high school wasn't really that bad. But I learned I liked wine more than I liked the fizzy beer. So I was kind of an odd man out with a few friends, and we really enjoyed wine. And then when I was also a rock hound, and so I thought I would try to get a degree in mining engineering. And so there were 3 great schools for that. One was the University of Arizona, the other was the University of Utah, and the other was in Colorado, the School of Mines. And I was an avid skier through junior high and high school. a very avid skier. And so I picked the school that had the best snow, and that's Utah, the driest, deepest powder. And so that's where I went to start my journey in mining engineering with a that was my major. My minor was in skiing. And it got me in trouble with my dad because I continued, evolving in the wine world of different wines to drink, and started with like Farm, Strawberry Hill, and then Lancers and Matus, and then up to Almaden and on south. And then I ended up going down to Chile about a year after I got into the University of Utah. The main reason was I was spending more time on my minor than my major. And my dad really liked that. So I elected to follow my minor versus my major and continued my skiing endeavors in Utah for a while. And then when we all ran out of snow there, what does one do? Well, you go to South America. And so I ended up, I'd always seen pictures of Portillo in the ski magazines. And I said, man, I want to go there. And so that's where I and a friend of mine, we went down to Chile with not knowing any Spanish or what was going on or anything, and hopped on a plane from Mexico City to Santiago and learned real quick that we should have learned and known a little bit of Spanish, and we should have done our homework on the politics going on there at the time, and didn't even know, but fell in love with the fact that Chile was a huge wine producing country. I had no idea about that then. So I thought I'd like died and gone to heaven. So here I am in this area and thinking, oh my gosh, there's wine everywhere and you're expected to drink wine.
Exactly. Well, back up quickly with Dad. I mean, was wine obviously important for him if he's making it? I mean,
right.
It was a big deal.
Hobby. He enjoyed wine. He enjoyed, he didn't drink beer either, but our family was used to having a little cocktail before dinner and then some wine with dinner or just wine before dinner. And he enjoyed making it because we are in, near Northeast Pennsylvania. There's a grape growing area there along Lake Erie. And so he would go up there, buy grape juice and bring it on down and turn it into wine and bottle it up.
Was it good?
And it was good. I mean, for my taste then, I thought it was great.
Dad, this is delicious.
But all kinds of varieties for sure.
So you're in Chile. I mean, is this where the light bulb goes off for you? Where you're like, wine, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, not on the first day, but I ended up, it was supposed to be a 30-day trip to Chile and then 60 days working our way back up to America. And I ended up staying 3 years there and had completely fell in love with it. There were a lot of reasons for staying. It was a once in a lifetime opportunity, to live through, a country that was having financial problems, 1,000% inflation, a democratically elected socialist government heading to communism, basically total chaos. The Wild West of the world was going on there, and I had an opportunity to partake in that. And then during all that, I was exposed to all these different wines and great food and great people. And we ended up renting a little farm down in the south of Chile, and our neighbors had vineyards, and we're making wine with equipment that you'd find today in a museum, but nonetheless making wine and learning all about that and the good food. And then I met a family, the Ferrer family, and they brought me into their fold and taught me everything about fine wine, fine food, wines of the world. And I thought, wow, this is great. And there was a research station, nearby in the south of Chile that kind of considered themselves the same as Sonoma, in their degree days. And so I thought, well, that was great. We could try all this stuff there. And then when it was time to leave, which, they had it back, this was, 50 years ago. And I was there during the sort of the communist era, socialist communist era with Allende for 2 years and 3 months. And then there was the coup and everything changed. And it was a military coup. So it wasn't as much fun to stay there. So I stayed 9 months and then left and decided somehow I need to figure out how to get paid to drink wine and enjoy wine.
Yes.
And so that's I really went off, and I had to face reality and come back to America and get a real job.
Mm-hmm.
And so I converted my plan from mining engineering, which really helped on the soil side of things in the vineyards, to enology and viticulture. And it's not really even work. I mean, it is work, but it's fun.
Yeah.
It's thoroughly an enjoyment of life.
And you decided, well, yeah, and you decided to go back to school because, again, this was the path you were like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. So back to school you went to continue this career.
Okay. Yeah, very focused. Where I was messing around, skiing, first round, I was like, taking, I think, the normal course load would have been like 24 credits or what have you. And I was doing, 35, 36, ludicrous amount, but I was focused.
Yeah.
And raced that. And then my first job was actually in Ohio,
mm-hmm.
where I was going to school then. And I worked a year up in Madison, Ohio, along Lake Erie. And then actually I came out to California looking for my, a regular real job on the coast, and was offered a job actually back at Buena Vista at the time. But being from the Northeast or the Midwest, sort of, where everything's green and lush, and going to California. And at that point, that was in the 70s, and they were having I guess it would be not the late 70s, early 80s, because I went out in 81, but this was 76. So they were having, the fifth year of a 5-year drought, and everything was brown and dirty and dusty and pretty much, not nice looking. And I thought, who in their right mind would live here? So I went back to upstate New York and took a job there for 5 years, and then realized, well, need to kind of suck it up and face the fact of reality that one needs to move on and be where more of the noble varieties are grown. Even though you can grow them to a degree in New York, they tend to get frozen all the time. Mm-hmm. And so I went back to California and interviewed at a few places. And the DeLoach family hired me out West Sonoma County in 1981. And I moved out there, and, those dusty, dirt brown hills all of a sudden over time became the golden hills of California.
Yeah. Stunning.
To date.
Yeah, the stunning hills of California for sure. Did you, because essentially this is what you want to do. So for you, was it like, I need to be in California, I need to be in Sonoma, because that's where, like you said, that's where these noble varieties are being grown? I mean, was that like it was like Disneyland for you?
Well, it was. I mean, I could have probably worked anywhere in the state, but Sonoma just felt better. I had interviewed in Napa and even down in Monterey and Santa Barbara, but Sonoma County, being close to San Francisco at the time, and it's just sort of more countrified, different appellations, more sort of down to earth farming type of an area there. And I thought, well, this is pretty cool. This is nice. And so the DeLoach Vineyards was right in the heart of the Russian River Valley, and you're next to all the redwoods. You've got a river, you've got the coast nearby. You can grow pretty much anything in that county. And so I thought, well, this is great. And so I moved to very close to the winery, in West Santa Rosa, and then now live up in Healdsburg, still the heart of the wine area.
And at DeLoach, I mean, I know now they're sort of known for Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Zinfandel. Was that the same when you were there?
It was, yeah. We were renowned for Pinot, as you say, Chardonnay, and Zinfandel. And then when I was there, we created what was called the OFS tier, kind of like a Grand Reserve or Special Selection. Our finest selection is what it was, where we did it almost like a vineyard designate. It was for the Zinfandels, but we did that also for the Chardonnay and the Pinot Noir. Basically, our best of the best was what we were doing there. And everything was from the Russian River. We did make some cab from Dry Creek, the Dry Creek area and upper Russian River, but we were more of a Burgundy house plus the Zin. And that continues today. It was sold, the DeLoach family sold it to the Boisset group, and they are continuing on with a huge focus on Pinot and Chardonnay.
What did you learn there specifically, you think, that's helped you, even today at Kendall Jackson?
Well, I learned, and this is kind of why Jess was looking for someone like me. Um, I loved Chardonnay and still love it to this day. And we basically, the DeLoach family and the Jackson family started out about the same year in reality.
Okay.
With marketing wine. And, we were all barrel fermented French oak for our Pinot and Chardonnay at DeLoach, and then used American oak for the Zinfandel. But we made a very rich, lush, unctuous Chardonnay that was pleasing and easy to drink. And similar to what Jess was doing, very rich, even though he wasn't at 100% barrel ferment at the time, but, along those lines. So we made a wine that you didn't need a PhD to enjoy. I mean, it looked good. It had a nice golden color, regardless of where you're working and where I was working. And it had all the aromatics. You didn't have to, do a deep dive into the glass to figure out what you were smelling. And then it was one that tasted well and filled your palate and had a long finish. I mean, that's the name of the game, is, to present something that's fun and easy to drink and that everyone can enjoy.
Do you look back sometimes, because I feel like you are really on the forefront of a lot of first for even DeLoach and Kendall Jackson. Do you look back sometimes and think like, oh, those were the good old days, or the good old days right now?
I'd say the good old days have lasted about 40 years. Just, changing. I mean, the only thing, when I look back, I mean, there's of course size, but everything we did at both places was all done in small lot fermentations, even to this day at Kendall Jackson. That's the way it's done. And so I think just the good old days are the good old current days. Mm-hmm. I'd say old with OL without the OLD part, just the good old.
Exactly. When you were at DeLoach, and then even in the beginning at Kendall Jackson, was Dad ever in your head? I mean, because he really did, I feel like, plant this seed for you, like making wine as a hobby. But, was Dad in your head at all, saying like, as far as like anything that you remember him doing or saying?
Well, it was, we were coming at this from different perspectives. He was looking at it as a hobby.
Right.
He went to MIT. He has like a PhD in optics, making lenses and telescopes and doing stuff for the government that we could never talk about back then. Right. And then he sees this guy go on, off track into the sort of the farming agricultural world, and shaking his head. But now he's very proud and very happy and has seen the light. And it all goes but it all goes back to him and his little 5-gallon carboys.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just feel like it's so serendipitous, I guess, that, here's Dad making wine as a hobby, and then here's Randy, just named American wine legend. So I don't know. It's a sweet connection, I guess.
It is. It's a very sweet and kind connection for sure.
So you were at DeLoach, how long? About?
A little over 12 years.
Yeah. Okay. Because then...
And then
Go ahead.
But then in 1993 is when I started with Just Jackson, the Jackson family wines.
And
in
he approached you, right?
Oh, he did. Yeah. He had actually approached me a couple times. And by this time I was ready to make the move. And I wasn't really sure, in the beginning, but he put in a hook that I couldn't refuse, because all the time I'd been in California, everyone knew I loved Chile. I went down to Chile every year, every other year, just to maintain my old friendships down there. And Jess was down there sometimes. We never crossed paths, but we were in the same winery within a week or two of each other at various times. And so he realized that. And so he asked me to come on board, and he had 3 assignments for me, 3 projects. And the first was to create a brand from the Santa Barbara area called Camelot. We've since sold that brand, but Camelot. And then to reopen the Ed Mead's winery and get that brand going again up in the Anderson Valley of Mendocino, and then go down to Chile and start a brand and, acquire land and build a winery at some point there. And that was the Chilean part that got me. And I thought, oh my God, you're going to pay me to go down there and do this? And I said, sign me up. And so that's what started it all. And then right quick, all of this happened within 3 or 4 months of my coming on board. And then he wanted to expand and around the world. And so he had just recently purchased the land in Italy. And so I became the international wine guy for him and managed that. We had just acquired a little property in France has become our stave mill. So we're half owners of a stave mill in France. So I was managing that. And then he wanted to continue around the world. And so he said, well, let's go to Argentina. And off to Argentina we went and set up the brand in Tapiz and bought, thousands of acres of land there, and subsequently sold that because of the politics there and the financial situation, but continued into Australia and did all the research all over Australia and picked the spot, the flag, to put KJ or Jackson Family Wines there in the McLaren Vale area. And then we were working in France, and then we were doing stuff in the north of Italy and the south of Italy, all that in the first couple of years. And then he asked me to take over KJ, which is, the real reason he had hired me. It was just to kind of get me in the fold. And then he asked me to take over the Kendall Jackson brand, which of course was a lot larger than all these other smaller brands everywhere. And so I had to kind of turn them over to the people that I had hired in most all of those places, except for Chile. I still am in charge of Chile just because that's my little passion down there with Don Hartford. And we have our new wine called Dakel, Dakel. That's just Pinot and Chardonnay from down there. But then, as I was saying, he asked me to take over the KJ brand as winemaster, and off to the races we went. And that was many years ago. We were a lot smaller then, and we only had one other brand in the gang there. It was Kendall Jackson and Cambria. That was it. Wow. And now we have so many more. And we were buying land, developing vineyards, buying vineyards. We were building wineries or buying wineries because we were growing so fast. And we knew, that we needed to have, it was better to be in charge of as much of the process as possible. So that meant, have as many of your own grapes as you possibly can, do as much of the fermentation, if not all of it, as you can, so that you're completely in charge. If something goes awry, it's no one's fault but your own. And that's what we've succeeded in doing. We've kind of backed off a little bit on the grape part. We're down, we're running about 80% internal fruit, depending on the variety, but we're 100%, produced and fermented in our own properties, which is great.
Yeah.
We have all the.
He had a vision.
He sure did, and his vision, a lot of people couldn't quite understand or believe in his vision, but he wanted to make a wine. It started with the Chardonnay that the world, everyone could afford, an affordable luxury. Is basically what he called it. At the time, and we still do today. A very nice killer Burgundian Chardonnay at a price that people can afford to pay, and it brings a smile to everyone's face.
And that's huge in this world of wine that we're looking at, because as you know, it seems like a new winery or label or something is popping up daily, especially if you're, immersed in a wine country. So it just seems like, he did a little ahead of his time, I think, maybe.
I would say a bit. I mean, we were ahead of our time so many times. It's ridiculous. Sometimes being ahead of your time works really well for you. Sometimes you're so far ahead that it doesn't work out. This is one of the ones where we were just, the timing was perfect, because, the world was realizing, okay, what's white Burgundy? Oh, it's Chardonnay. What's Chardonnay? Well, it's a great variety that, grows really well in California. And the cooler the area, the better the wine. And he realized that too. And so, he was all about quality, no matter what, no matter who he was talking to or we were talking to. If it was our finance department, and, they're saying, well, Randy, this costs, a little too much, and you should do it this way. And I'd say, well, it's quality. It's all about the quality. And, if we got into a bit of a discussion, I would take the 2 glasses and show him to Jess and let him try it. And he always went with my taste. We had very similar tastes, and it was always take the high road. We'll figure it out later, but just take that high road. And that all along. And so, for those not too familiar with the state of California, we're along the cool coast, nothing in the Central Valley or the Sierras. We love the areas that have the fog. We have another sort of saying, mountains, ridges, hillsides, and benches. That's where we like to grow our grapes. It's a lot harder and more expensive, but you get better flavors. And unfortunately, lower yields, but that's what goes with better flavors sometimes. We kind of abhor or stay far away from valley floor because, that's where you're talking quantity and not quality. And again, going back to the beginning, it's quality prevails. And that's been a blessing for us.
No, absolutely. What do you think it was about you that he was most interested in? Because you said he approached you a few times. What do you think, what was it about you specifically?
I think it was because we were making, we were making a Chardonnay that people liked in a similar style, even though I was focused, limited to just the Russian River Valley in Sonoma County, and he had no limits. And he, I don't know, there's probably a few people around that were making Chardonnays, but somehow he just called me, and off we went.
Fantastic.
I was ready. He had, it was just being at the right place at the right time. I was ready to make a move, and he was offering an opportunity that I could not turn down. And I think he saw the Chardonnay, because he challenged me with the Chardonnay. I'll go down to Santa Barbara. And I said, Santa Barbara, why go there? All the great Chardonnays here in the Russian River Valley. He says, oh, no, trust me, Randy. And I said, oh, yeah, whatever, I'll go. And did the Camelot thing down there. And every month, we'd cross paths, and he'd say, well, how's that Chardonnay? It's okay. Still like that Russian River stuff. And then it's interesting because the Chardonnays from the Santa Maria bench take a little bit more time to evolve and to become, that one unto their own, whereas the Russian River is a little quicker. So about 6 months after the harvest, he says, so what do you think? And I said, Jess, you're right. A killer area and a killer Chardonnay from down there. And one of my favorite Chardonnays actually comes from down there that I love to drink. But it's a very important part of our Vintners Reserve blend. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, he's always right. And I had to admit defeat. He just smiled.
It's nice to hear. So it's nice to hear when you're right.
Yeah.
And it'll be what, 30 years you've been there?
Yeah, I'm in my 30th harvest. It'll be a complete 30 full years later. Well, next August actually. But I've done 30 harvests.
Wow, Randy.
And that's just with Kendall Jackson in California, not counting any others.
Right. Did you work some harvests around the world while you were at Kendall Jackson?
Yeah, when I would get these different ones going, sometimes I'd stay the whole harvest, sometimes just half, sometimes I'd go, for a couple of weeks, several times. So I did, when we were getting things going to, make sure they're working right, we'd do the, manage the harvest in Argentina and Chile, Italy, and Australia. So you could add those in, but they're not really 100%, so I don't really count them.
Right.
Staying there from start to finish.
We're going to continue our conversation on harvest in just a second, but first, a quick message from today's sponsor. Welcome to Tap and Vine 559. The place for that drink after work. Choose from a long list of local wine, craft beers, and ciders on tap. The place for lunch or dinner. Shareable bites, fresh salads and bowls, and mouth-watering sandwiches and entrees. Come with a friend, the family, or book Tap and Vine for your next party or event. More information at tapandvine559.com. Tap and Vine 559, the place to eat, meet, and drink in Southern Oregon. So love.
I call it the ultimate love, because you're working all year long. You've watched or coordinated with the folks in the vineyard on the pruning, and then you have bud break. The vines are growing. You're suckering. The head, the trunk, the bottom. Your shoot thinning, where you have your seconds and tertiaries or adventitious shoots growing. You got to get rid of those and just get down to your primaries, and then you have bloom. Which is a wonderful time of the year if you've ever been in a vineyard during bloom, with those little flowers, those little baby flowers, and the aroma that you get is like perfume. It's absolutely wonderful and so very special. And then now you're off to the races, because you're watching them go from the size of a pinhead up to a small marble, or the size of your small little fingertip there, and then they start changing color. Which is variation, and they start developing, more sugar and their flavors, and then it gets to be harvest time, and I think everybody just loves that, because sure you're working 7 days a week, any hour of the day, but you're spending, at least I do, I spend the majority of my time in the vineyard, because I believe it all starts there. And so you've got to be out there trying the grapes, tasting the grapes, getting the data from the lab to kind of help you decide where you're going to go. In the first place, you're not wasting your time, because we have a lot of acres, and we have to kind of get things going and then sort of do the handoffs to the local teams. But that's the important part. Okay, when do you actually pick that grape?
Yeah.
And it's all about tasting the grape over and over and over again. And then you say, okay, pick them, Dano. And off to the races you go, and you hope you made the right decision, and you have the plan already for fermentation, the yeast and how things are supposed to go, and your barrel plan, and the percent new oak, what forest it comes from, what's the grain tightness, all that stuff's already basically set and ready to go. So it's all based on, okay, did you pick them at the right flavor? I think it's the best time of the year. And then after harvest, you're just kind of waiting for them to go through the fermentation and the primary, which is the sugar fermentation, and then the secondary, which is the malolactic, which gives it that little kiss of butter. Don't want too much butter, but just a little bit. And then we're aging and stirring.
So for you then, this is harvest is the most wonderful time of the year, but it really is one shot, right? You have one shot every year.
That's what I'm saying, yeah, or implying, is that you have to get that pick called correctly, because you can't. It's not like you're making vodka where you can just buy vodka, alcohol all year long and just tweak it a little bit, or it's an agricultural commodity. It only grows once a year, and so you gotta nail it.
Do you? Any exceptional years, vintages that come to mind, like just that blew you away?
Boy, that's a great question. It seems like let me see, something about the years that end in a 7 or an odd year. So, 97, 07, 17, 19.
Okay.
Great. This one, that we're, 21, and then you get to the even numbered years. Well, they're all great too, but it's hard to say, to really pick a year. I mean, that's a huge generality, because we have so many different varieties and so many different appellations and just a handful of counties. But, one the Knights Valley for Cabernet, in 2017 could have been the best vintage ever, where the 18 or what have you, maybe we won't go into that area because of the fires, but let's go, 16 or 14 or what have you, could be the best for Cab in the Alexander Valley. Mm-hmm. So we're very diverse, and where we have all these wonderful vineyards, and again, blessed that we have that to work with, thanks to Jess and everyone, in the day. So it's hard to really pick, a year, but those are some good vintages.
It's like picking your favorite child or something. I get it.
Yeah.
We have wildfires here in Southern Oregon and some that have threatened vineyards in the past. And farming has a ton of risks, as I don't have to tell you that. And that's just one of them. And I feel like it's getting more threatening year after year.
It truly is. I mean, there's two things that are the most challenging, I would say, out there. One is the wildfire issue / smoke. The other is this, whether you believe it or not, look at the past 200 years of pictures or 100 years of pictures of the glaciers. I mean, they're all, receding. So obviously there is global warming. And so what's happening now is, what used to be a really cool area is now just cool. And so things are changing out there. And then what we're seeing is, like a fire can be a challenge, so can a heat wave be a tremendous challenge. And usually, we've got, one or two sort of heat waves, or maybe a day or two or three long, over the past decade. Maybe you get none, maybe you'll get one, maybe you'll get two. And you can work your way through that and kind of adjust on the fly. We had one this year that was pretty interesting. It was record breaking. It was like 5 days. And there wasn't a cool spot anywhere to be found. And it was a really hot heat wave. 115 would be the average, high of 120, low of 110 for a week. That's a tough one. And so you're kind of caught, when you're farming these grapes in these cooler areas for the quality and the enhanced flavors you get, you also have to deal with the fact that, okay, yes, it's cool and it has fog, and fog is moist. And so you have to pull leaves, for the morning side, so that they will dry out a little quicker and not get powdery mildew, and leave more leaves for shade in the afternoon. And you do that, or you don't pull those leaves, and you have more shade for when you have that heat spell, but then you've got to deal with the risk of mildew. So it's a tough call. And we unfortunately, I will risk the vineyard to heat than to mildew. So that's, the cards are on the table, and we just hope.
Right. And I've also seen too, a lot of wineries around the globe changing practices with farming to be a little friendlier to the earth. And that's the same with Kendall Jackson. You guys have been evolving over the last few decades when it comes to that.
Oh, for sure. Every single one of our vineyards is sustainably certified, and we pay growers a bonus or an upcharge if they will get theirs certified sustainable. We also do a lot, along the same front of management of the amount of water we're using, both in the vineyard and in the winery. We've cut our water use more than in half, which is amazing in itself. And then, it used to be people would just, put 5 gallons of water on their vine per week, and that was that. Well, sometimes you need it and sometimes you don't. So why put it on if you don't need it? So we're managing all of that and doing a lot of work with solar power and soon wind power. But our focus right now, and I can't think of the appropriate word, there is one that is used these days, but it has to do with, focusing on the earth, the dirt right there in the vineyard. And rather than always taking from the dirt a crop and this and that, it's replenishing, regenerative farming is the word I'm looking for. And that's where you're really focused on the soil and how to make it even better than it was when you first got your hands on that soil or that dirt, make your dirt better. Good dirt makes great wines. And so that's very important. And, we want to make it better in the future than it ever was in the past. And that's the hot topic these days in all of viticulture.
Well, I just feel like,
I don't mean to interrupt,
no.
but I'm gonna, to the point of, putting, sheep out there and letting them do their thing to help manage the grasses and, by byproducts of fertilization and, even chickens for that matter. But, it's really a unique science. I mean, the soil is a living, at the end of the day. I might get in trouble saying this, but it's kind of like a living organism. There's a lot of microorganisms in the soil. So trying to keep that happier soil makes great wines too.
Yes. And you can interrupt me anytime. I feel like the earth gives us so much when it comes to especially wine, right? So why wouldn't we do everything we can to make it as healthy as possible?
Exactly. And these vineyards are around, for a long time. You figure the norm is 25 years or 30 years, then you're going to have to replace it. Of course, you have some old vines in vineyards that are 80 to 100 years old, but at some point, they're going to die off, and you want that soil, to be better. Right. It's not like corn and soybeans where you're alternating every other year and just pull. We want those soils. If we can make them better today than they were a year ago or than they were 5 years ago, that's a plus.
Yeah, agreed. So I have this wine over here, the Vintners Reserve Chardonnay, which I think so many people are familiar with. This guy, though, I'm not familiar with. This is the 85 calorie Chardonnay.
Right.
What?
Yeah, low cal.
What? I'm going to taste it while you talk about it. This is new. Okay. This is new, right?
It is new. It's like 2 years-ish new. We've done some research for several years on this because it's a lot harder to make this than to make the regular Vintners Reserve by a long shot. But we try to make it similar. So between the two of them, in gross generalities, we have like half the grapes will come from Monterey. Probably a third would be from Santa Barbara, and then the remainder, which would be 15 or 20%, would be from Mendocino. So you have those different regions, and in those different regions, you have different aromatics and flavors. So, the North Coast, Mendocino gives you your pear and crisp green apple. Monterey gives you your ripe apple. Carneros gives you your oily pear. Monterey, your lemon and lime, and Santa Barbara, your tropical fruit and pineapple. So we're trying to have those be relatively similar between the low calorie and the regular Vintners Reserve. The Vintners Reserve is about 93-95% barrel fermented, and this is barrel fermented too, but in kind of a different way. We have to bring in some of the grapes a little earlier in the season and ferment them relatively fast, and then kind of wait, and we remove the alcohol on that first tranche, and then we wait for the rest of the grapes to get really ripe like we normally do, and then blend that wine with that juice to cut our sugar levels down in half effectively. And then that's how we re-ferment. We do that fermentation then in barrels, all French oak.
Right. It's delicious.
Oh, thank you.
It's very tasty and so smart. And this is also sort of something I'm seeing too. Lower sugar wines kind of becoming a little trendy out there. Everybody's looking to cut the sugar, right? And I mean, wine is no exception.
Exactly. Yeah. Lower calorie. I mean, you can enjoy it. You can drink more by the pool.
I was going to say you can drink more of it.
You can lose weight while you're drinking. That's
Exactly. That should be right there on the bottle. Lose weight while you drink me. This delicious Chardonnay. But what is it you think about the Vintners Reserve Chardonnay? I know you said Jess really was looking for something that affordable luxury in a wine. And this is something, I mean, you cannot argue with the familiarity of the name and the label. I mean, I feel like everyone knows Kendall Jackson Chardonnay.
They pretty much do.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't say Kendall Jackson, they're more often than not just calling it KJ.
KJ, yeah.
I want my mother or my family or I, drink KJ. KJ all day.
Nice.
They love. And one of the reasons is it's I guess the continuity of the quality of the wine. From year to year, it's you can hardly tell the difference, and that's because of all the vineyards we have and that we're in charge of, and those ratios of flavors. And so we're not like bouncing around all over the place, getting different grapes. And so that helps, to maintain the consistency of it. And of course, the team, we have a great team, that I lead, we've all worked together for many, many, many years. So we have similar palates, similar ideas. So that helps on the harvesting and just, managing the fermentations. The fact that it's truly barrel fermented, real barrels, and it goes in as juice and ferments in those barrels, half French, half American. The fact that it's fermenting in the barrel, that builds out the mid palate. And then now that you have a barrel fermented wine still in the barrel, the lees are at the bottom now. They're the dead yeast that have fallen down, and we're stirring them, once or twice a month, once a month for sure for the Vintners Reserve, and even the low calorie will get lees stirring because that's so important. And then we let it go through the lee stirring adds that silky essence to the side of the palate,
right?
And then we do the secondary fermentation in the barrel too for the little kiss of butter. So you've got all those things, the great aromatics from grape and the different fruit tones, and then the subtle oak, subtle vanillin, subtle butter, not the kind of butter you get at the movie theater, just a subtle kiss, and then all of that transcends and transitions itself into the taste and in your palate and in your mouth, and that roundness and bigness of ripe grapes and the barrel fermentation fills your mouth with great joy. And then when you swallow it, it has a really long lingering finish. And what happens, a lot of people, they don't believe how long that finish is, and so they, after that smile and that finish, they say, that's impossible, and they have another sip, and or they say, wow, that is a really nice tasting wine with a long finish. Then a couple sips lead to a glass, a couple of glasses, to a bottle, and we can't take responsibility. Yes, I'll take a case.
Exactly. And I think I didn't even think about the consistency aspect of the Chardonnay, but you're right. I think for most of us, when we're paying money for a beverage like a bottle of wine, I want it to be consistent. If it's the wine if it's my go-to, right? I want it to be consistent every single time I open it.
Right, because if it isn't, or you're kind of blown away, you're probably not going to be very happy. It's a 50-50 chance whether you're going to be happier or sadder versus just happy. Exactly.
We're going to wrap up just a little bit. Oh, nice. Friend. Cheers. I love that. I love that. I was going to ask you, when you're not working or promoting Kendall Jackson, is Chardonnay your all-time favorite, or is there another wine out there that you just absolutely love?
Oh no, I would say probably 90% of the wine I drink is Chardonnay, and then follow that with Pinot and Cab. But I like everything. But I will drink more Chardonnay than anything else for sure.
I always say I don't discriminate. I like them all.
Yes.
Yeah. I like all of them.
Good.
We're going to get to the final three, but first I wanted to ask you, since you have been at KJ for about 30 years now, what have you seen in those 3 decades that, again, this is such a familiar label and name and wine. What have you seen over the last few decades that really changing positively for this company?
For the company or for this particular wine?
All of it. Yeah. I mean, you've seen a lot of changes, I'm sure.
Yeah, I have. And I think one of the biggest changes was actually shortly after I started, the wine, this particular wine was only 60% barrel fermented,
Hmm.
and it wasn't 100% Chardonnay. It was like 60, it was not 100% barrel fermented. It was only 60%. And it was 93 to 97% Chardonnay. So when I took over, well, we each challenged each other. He challenged me to make it 100% Chardonnay, and I challenged him to get the barrel fermentation percent up, more towards 90, 95, or even 100. And I accepted his challenge, which I had no choice, and he accepted mine, to the point of running out buying a boatload of more barrels. So
Hmm.
he loved the fact of more barrel fermentations, and maintaining. We don't have a lot of new oak in here; it's very low, but it's more just that effect of the barrel fermentation. He fell in love with that, and that was a huge change. And then I was scared to death because he wanted it to go to 100% Chardonnay, and so there was maybe like a little 1% Riesling, or something along those lines, or Gewurz in there, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Well, when in Chardonnay, that is a single variety, but you can subdivide out Chardonnay and get different clones. And clone 4 is like the workhorse. Great flavors everywhere. You can really, exactly what's going to happen. Well, exactly what's going to happen with everything, but you can count on it. And then you have the Dijon clones, 96, 76, et cetera, and they give you sort of the florally tones or perfume tones. And then there's what we call the Rued clones, or Rued, yeah, Rued clones, and then the purified Rued clones, which are 809 C. Well, those three have like a very unique tone, like a perfume, but very, very aromatic, like a Viognier. In fact, if you do 100% pure, which we do from the Seco Highlands, KJ Vineyard Designate, you have to tell people that trust me, this is 100% Chardonnay, because it'll blow your mind.
Wow.
You think, wow, that's very unique. And so that's what I had to rely on and get going in a big way, for those other little nuances that you need and want for Chardonnay.
Mm-hmm.
That you get that from the clone, and then you can manage that with your yeast and your malolactic, and then ultimately your barrel toasts. How you handle that part of the barrel program, and time and barrel. So it's 100% Chardonnay guaranteed ever since that one day. I took him on, and he was happy. We're all happy.
Everybody's happy.
Yep.
You're not passionate about this at all whatsoever.
Yeah, no.
And I mean, there's something about not only your job, but it sounds like this company that, I mean, you've, again, 30 years, sir. You love it, obviously.
Right. And we're only 40 years old. So no, it's a family-run, family-owned company, and it is more than that. I mean, the family, when you work with this company, with this family, you become part of the family, literally, and they treat everyone like that. It's hard to. It almost brings tears to my eyes, to be thinking about this and saying it, but it's pretty intense, and family-run, family-owned, and very special.
Hmm.
There's so many examples I don't even want to go into that would bring tears to your eyes of what they've done for folks.
I love it. All right, sir, we're going to wrap up and get to the final three. And I will say, it sounds like you're lucky to have them. They're lucky to have you.
Yeah, well, let's just say I'm lucky to be with them.
Amazing. Okay. Best advice you've ever been given?
Best advice. Well, try to know the answer to the question before the question is asked.
Good.
Predicting.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's like always being prepared, right?
AKA that, yes.
Yeah.
Every way you can imagine.
I feel like I may know this answer, but what's your happy place?
My happy place. Wow. I don't know, looking off on a beautiful beach with a glass of Chardonnay in hand, and or uh, looking at a beautiful ski area and ski run with a glass of Chardonnay in hand.
Okay. I had a feeling. I knew it. And then in all things food and drink, what do you crave?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's great because I'm really craving it right now, and I'm going to have to wait like 2 months, apparently. So in November 15th ish in Sonoma County is when the Dungeness crab season normally opens. They postponed it until December, and now they've postponed it into January for various reasons. But Dungeness crab fresh with Kendall Jackson Vintners Reserve Chardonnay, and maybe a little loaf of sort of French baguette and some creamy cheese. That's heavenly.
Oh, that sounds amazing. You know, we have crab up here in Oregon. You can come anytime.
Okay. I may take you up on it. It's the season for crab, and there's no crab to be had. So.
I know. We got to be patient.
See you Christmas Eve.
Randy, thank you so much for joining me today. And again, congratulations on being named American Wine Legend by Wine Enthusiast, their Wine Star Awards. Obviously, after chatting with you for the last 55 minutes, obviously well-deserved honor.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for your time. And I'm happy I could, help and answer all your questions, and am always available 24/7.
I feel like you have lots more stories up your sleeve. So
oh yeah,
maybe when we shut down, I'll stop recording. I'll come visit you at Kendall Jackson. We'll have some Chardonnay. Then you can tell me the good stuff.
I would appreciate that and look forward to it. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Hungry for More, an Epicurean's Dilemma with me, Trish Close. Today's episode sponsored by Tap and Vine 559, the place to eat, meet, and drink in Southern Oregon. You can watch this podcast and subscribe on my YouTube channel. Just search Hungry for More. You can also listen and subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts.